How did a $50 punching bag expose my dad's biggest secret? When I was 16, my anger issues were completely out of control. I was one suspension away from getting expelled, and my chest constantly felt like it was going to explode. I begged my dad to let me join a local boxing gym. My school counselor actually recommended it, but my dad shut it down immediately. He was a super strict corporate guy. He said hitting things was for delinquents, and I was just looking for an excuse to act like a thug. He'd joke at dinner, "If you can't even keep your room clean, how are you gonna handle a real workout?" So, when my buddy Tyler mentioned his older brother was selling a heavy bag and some beat-up gloves for $50, I bought them on the spot. I dragged it all home and hung it from the rafters in our unfinished basement. My dad lost his absolute mind. He yelled for an hour about responsibility and bringing violence into his house. He was so mad he barely looked at me the next day. But then he laid down an ultimatum. He said I had exactly 1 week to prove this wasn't just a violent phase before he dragged it to the dump. He literally put a whiteboard on the fridge and started tallying every single time I had an attitude. Day 1, I got a tally for slamming my bedroom door. Day 2, I got one for rolling my eyes. But then something shifted. That night, instead of punching my wall or screaming into my pillow, I went down to the basement. I hit that bag until my shoulders burned and my knuckles ached. And when I walked back upstairs, my head was completely quiet. The pressure in my chest was just gone. My mom even asked why I was smiling at breakfast. Day 4 was the real test. I had a meeting with my history teacher who usually kicked me out weekly. This time, I sat through the whole class, totally chill. He actually called my dad that afternoon, totally shocked, saying I was like a completely different kid. He told my dad I finally found a healthy outlet. My dad just brushed it off. He kept making his little marks on the whiteboard. But then day 6 happened. Dad had been under massive pressure at his firm. Corporate layoffs were happening, and the stress was eating him alive. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to get some water. The house was dead silent, except for this rhythmic, heavy thudding coming from the basement. I crept to the top of the stairs and looked down. There was my dad, in his dress pants, tie loosened, standing in the freezing basement. He was just wailing on my heavy bag. He didn't even have gloves on. His knuckles were raw. Tears were streaming down his face, and he was just letting out 20 years of bottled-up corporate rage. I sat quietly on the stairs and watched for 10 minutes. He never knew I was there. The next morning, the whiteboard was completely gone from the fridge. He never said a word to me about what happened. But when I went down to the basement after school, my heavy bag had been wiped down, and sitting neatly on a stool right next to it, a brand new pair of boxing gloves in his exact size.